Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome along. This is Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now, on today's show, we're going to be talking about why word of mouth is so important. It's an expression you may hear repeatedly these days. I mean, I suppose for a long time people kind of associate it with networking, but word of mouth is becoming increasingly more and more important. Joining me in the studio today is Graham Wilson. He's a business coach and clinical hypnotherapist. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about word of mouth and why it could benefit your business and why it's going to help you get your message out there. Graham, it's lovely to have you with us today.
Good to be here.
For those people that don't really get what word of mouth is all about, I suppose I tried to do a quick summary of it there, but how would you summarise it?
Well, word of mouth is where everything happens. Word of mouth is the real world. And, you know, despite the recent changes over the years to more, we're living in digital, we're living in what appears to be this social world. But the reality is 80% of all decisions are still made in the real world by people talking. 65% of all the new business that happens to you comes from word of mouth. So there's a balance. There's a different correlation between online and off. So, you know, we've come up after over 20 years of working on this. We think it's really the time, as you rightly say, to get back to saying we need to engage and connect and share.
Is it a big problem, do you think, this whole element of engagement? We hear all the time that people are saying that our engagement level is coming down. I was at a presentation the other week and somebody said that if you actually carry it out and look at what people are saying about the engagement or the amount of time we need before we disengage with something, our engagement level is less than a goldfish. Yes. And that actually is insulting, I think, to us, because and to goldfish as well, I've just been told. The point about it is it because the content that we're creating and the things that we are saying aren't engaging enough to maintain interest?
I think in many cases it is, and I think we've got now a world of devices where you hear now that video is going from 5 minutes to 3 minutes to 2 minutes to a minute, and people won't listen for longer than that, because we have certainly generations who expect everything to happen instantaneous. But of course, within that, my view would be a lot of the messages that get out are superficial and they're not controlled. And in a business sense, you do need to control your message. It's very important, is that. So, yes, so are we engaging? We are engaging. Are we engaging in the right things from a business perspective? I think that's probably more important.
When we're talking about making decisions then in the real world, what are the decisions that you're talking about and are of benefit to business? Is it the marketing conversation that we're having with people? Is it the sales conversation we're having? Is it the post-sales conversation? Is it in those conversations that we need to be looking at?
It's in fact all of those. It's all of those. We need to be thinking from a marketing perspective. We need to start bringing word of mouth into a strategic aspect. We need to start putting money, thought and time behind word of mouth from a marketing perspective in the message. In a sales perspective, we then need to think about how people literally engage with us, how they connect with us, and there are ways of doing that, methods. And then afterwards, of course, it becomes like after sales. We've got to have that connection and involvement longer term with people if we're going to retain them, and more importantly, get them to talk about the fantastic experience they had with our service or our product.
Do you think then it's the voice of the business? There are some people that write in a particular tone or a particular voice when they're writing their text on their website, when they're talking to people. Is it just an education around that you're trying to make them talk in a specific way?
Well, one of the interesting things about word of mouth is we all do it. And we all do it naturally.
You see, a lot of people just go, word of mouth is just talking.
Exactly, exactly. We've been doing it since we were cavemen, let's be honest. It is the oldest form of marketing. But the problem is, a lot of us are still doing it as if we were cavemen, because we don't understand that we've moved on and we've now learned. There's methodology. There's actually a process to this, to the whole thing about word of mouth, which most people don't realise. So they just, as you say, talk, and that's actually not very effective. And it's who talks and when, and it's making sure that we have the right people talk. Because a lot of businesses think that the people who do the most talking are the ones who actually buy the most product. And in our experience, that's actually quite often the opposite.
It's the people that do the listening.
It's the people that do the listening. But you have these wonderful people called advocates. And advocates actually love your product. They want to be involved, they want to connect with you, they've got ideas, they're hugely powerful. But most businesses we talk to actually don't really know how they're going to find out who those advocates are. And that's so critical, because an advocate will talk 4 to 10 times more often about your brand in a positive way without being paid than many of the other customers you've got.
See, it's very interesting. When I worked in the shopping telly environment, the thing that was the most powerful was the testimonials by previous customers. So as a presenter, you could go buy this XYZ, but once a testimonial came on the line, tell us about your experience, tell us what you think about the product. Once they started talking, the sales would go through the roof.
Absolutely.
And that was the thing that we always would see when we were doing that. If we were talking about the language that we actually use, we are quite easy to be led, aren't we, with language? For instance, I mean, I've used things like, well, by now, you've made up your mind that you'd like to get this. I mean, I'm actually telling them subconsciously. Silences and things like that. The words that you use, the linguistics that you use, can actually encourage somebody at a subliminal level to encourage them to do what you want them to do. Is that part of this as well?
It is. It's really understanding what your message is. But we would say more than just understanding your message, actually talk to your customers about your message. That's pretty simple and been around for a long time. And to do that, you really need to engage with your customers on a personal basis. You get so much more when you engage with people on a one-to-one than you can do online. And market research has got limitations. So yes, the words we use are very important, and the emotions that come into those words are very important as well.
And what about the story? Is the story important too? Do we all need a story, a backstory for the business that we've got? I mean, obviously we're going to be talking about some of the techniques and some of the examples, but is it important for every business to have that bit of history behind it?
Absolutely. And we're moving now more and more. We are ourselves a purpose-led business. And we know that more people are now more involved in the purpose of an organisation. What does this organisation do that I can actually connect with, that actually resonates with me? So those stories are very, very powerful. They're very, very powerful from induction to retaining people in an organisation. And there's some amazing stories of some companies now who are even offering people $2,000 to leave after the first 3 months if they don't like it. And the take-up of that is less than 1% because they have a story that binds people. And we all have a personal story. I mean, when I'm coaching people, I ask, what's your personal positioning? What's your story? What's the rationale? And businesses have the same. There's always a story. And the point is, if you don't give them a story, they make it up. And that's dangerous, actually. Word of mouth can work against you as well as for you if you don't know how to do it.
If you start leaving gaps.
Oh, yeah.
That can be very dangerous, can't it?
With referral, which we'll probably talk a little bit more about, very, very important is referral marketing. And there's online, which we could talk about. It has limitations. But so often we just leave it to people to say, tell people about me. Well, I've got very well-respected people who are very expert in marketing. And one in particular, I said, so what do they say? And he said, I'm not sure. He said, my programs are very reasonable cost. He says, they're quite cheap, really. I said, so do they say you're cheap? Which mortified him. Because the point is, people experience your product in different ways. You and I will experience a restaurant in a different way, so the story we will tell can be different. And the point is, it can get somewhat taken away from the actual core story that we really want people to be telling about our service or our passion, if it's a charity, for example.
Is it something that applies to all facets of industry, do you feel? Does everybody from we joke sometimes here about, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker down the high street. Do they need that backstory? Is word of mouth important to them, or is it because they are commodity sellers, so they've got a counter, people come in, they've made up their mind what they want to get, they're going to get it. We were talking about shopping before we started the programme, and how the difference between a woman, this sounds awfully sexist, and it isn't meant to be. All right, I mean, I'm digging a hole for myself, allow me to go down the hole on my own, all right, but okay, there are some people who have a shopping experience where they go out and they look around and it's a discovery. Yeah. Whereas in our particular instance, as we were saying, we would go out, and what we would do is we know what we're going to buy. We go to the shop. We go to the shop where we're going to buy it. We buy it and come home.
Absolutely.
So one, you've got the shopping experience, which is 2.5 hours, and our shopping experience is 2.5 minutes.
Exactly. In pair of trousers, trouser department out.
Yes.
That's the way we do it. It's very different, isn't it? So, in answer to your question, does it apply to butcher, baker, candlestick maker?
Question,
but it was a good question. I love it. It's lovely. I'm with you. But the fact is, yes, it does. With our case studies on our training program, we have everything from Ford, from Vodafone, from Zappos, from Cadbury's, from BMWs, from huge companies, right down to Arkwright's corner store, literally. So, it does apply to everybody, because it's often the smaller businesses. And what we've done with this is
Who benefits the most from it, do you think? Do the big businesses, because they're nearly intransigent, they're like a super liner, they can't turn around quickly, whereas a small business can react quickly and actually implement ideas?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, they do it in a different way, and we structure our programs in two different ways, because the way a corporate would approach it is quite different from the way a small business or a startup business would approach it. And who would get the most traction? Possibly the smaller businesses, because they often have a more intimate relationship with their customers that they can build on. So effectively, they can't afford a sales force. However, if they use word of mouth, they can actually build and generate a free sales force of advocates who love what they're trying to do and who talk about it. Corporates can't do that.
Hold that thought. Listen, more to come on this edition of the program. My guest on today's show is Graham Wilson, a business coach. I'm suffering a wee bit today. A business coach and a clinical hypnotherapist. I need a little bit of the old clinical bit. Still to come on this edition of the program, we're going to be looking about understanding how we learn how our customers behave, the power of stories, which we've kind of already touched on, more about how advocates can benefit your business as well, and also why you need to get your story right. What are the tools, what are the techniques that you should be thinking about when it comes to getting your story exactly tip-top so it actually does have an effect on the people that you want it to. Listen, more to come on this edition of Business Connections Live. It's great to have your company as always. We are live here. It's a lovely day outside. I mean, the sun is out, the grass is burnt to a cinder, and we're really placing this program, so we are absolutely live. If you're watching on Facebook, don't forget, you can always leave a comment there if you wish. If you've got a question for Graham, you can always leave a question there and we'll respond to it during the course of the program. If you're watching on YouTube, either live or maybe post-program as well, do leave a comment and also give us a thumbs up. Do like it, recommend it on to friends as well. And if you're listening on iTunes, well, thank you very much indeed for doing that. In fact, if you're listening on any of the podcast platforms, maybe you're watching on Roku across America and across Europe, then that's also good too. It's good to have your company, and thank you very much for joining us here at Business Connections Live. Let's go back a week now, shall we? We had the fabulous Nikki Creel on the program. One of the big issues that people have when it comes to social media is, where do you get all the content from? I remember talking to Gordon Treadgold. He sort of said the most effective way when you're on LinkedIn is to post every single day. Don't post once a month, don't post once a week, post once a day, because the chances are that not every post that you do is going to be that great. So if you post more often, the chances are you're going to get more out there and you're going to get more good posts going out for you. It was a really, really cracking show with Nikki last week. We were looking at some of the tools that were available to create content for your social media platforms. Things that will put text on pictures, things that will generate social posts, things that will show you the kind of questions that have been asked on the likes of YouTube and the search platforms as well. Great show. It was an hour, really, really cram-packed with great information. If you missed it, though, is a few of the highlights from last week's edition of Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company. My guest in the studio today is Nikki Creel. She's a social media coach and trainer. She's an author as well. We're talking about how to create media for all your different social media platforms.
I think the thing is that people know the theory, and everybody said you must be on social media, so they've jumped on social media, and then they realise how long it takes to create content, or they're spending far too long creating content. Whereas I believe that the real value of social media is the connections you make with people. I think the simplest thing is to find a calendar. Even if you do the next month, what you're going to do in the next month, rather than necessarily trying the whole year. What you want to do is, in that calendar, you want to put in your events that you know are taking place. How do you talk about your business, say, for National Selfie Day? So what can you do that fits in with your business with one of the weird holidays? But this is something that I think most people find useful. On Easel, you got brilliant for stories, for Instagram stories and Facebook stories. They've got templates, so you can just take it, add your own picture, add your own words to it, change the colours, change the font a little bit, and you got content to go for your on your Insta stories or Facebook stories. So you can put a piece of text into it, and it will create social media posts for you.
Really?
So 15,000 might give you up to 70 or 30 different social media posts. A lot of them is using AI to generate content or generate text. Some of that with that tool that I showed you, which is Try Lately or Lately, you can take content that you've already generated. So if you've got it in a Word document, you just put it in there and it will generate social media posts for you. I think it's really important. So whether you do it, it's having a way to source great content easily, so that you are the go-to person for knowledge in your particular field. So don't take somebody else's content and pretend it's yours.
That's not right.
That's theft there.
No.
But take somebody else's content and go, there's a brilliant idea in there, and then adapt it. So this is a brilliant site which I've discovered fairly recently, and it's if you're stuck for ideas or don't know what you should be blogging about, what you should be producing, these are the questions that people are asking on Google. Okay.
How cool.
So when you look at that, you should be writing blog posts that answer those particular questions. The easiest way to get an image is to take it yourself. We've all got our smartphones. Most of us will have looked at our smartphone within 5 minutes. I think 67% of the UK public have looked at their smartphone first within 5 minutes of waking up. But start with a good picture, and often the better pictures are the ones that go right in, so you look up close. So for example, with food photography, as we've seen in things like Instagram, you almost feel as you're tasting that food. You can involved with the food.
Add awesome text to your photos in seconds.
Great, lots of people use that. Just makes it nice and easy to do it. If you're doing the stories like Instagram stories or Facebook stories, you can add text to that just by tapping a little thing and add text and pictures and stickers to it. Well, I just want to tell you another tool to have a quick look at is Ripple.
Ripple.
R-I-P-L. You can add words to them, but you can create it into a little video just from stationary pictures.
Indeed,
it creates videos from pictures that you've already got. It adds text to it. It adds music to it. It's brilliant. Hello, I'm Nikki Creel. I'm a social media consultant, speaker, trainer and author. And I'm passionate about helping businesses to create content quickly, because I think at the moment that's something that people are struggling with. All you need to do is really have a strategy for it, know who your customers are, put a plan together, use the tools that are appropriate for your business that can save you tons and tons of time, schedule the content, and then spend your time doing the fun part, talking to people and engaging with your audience. So those are my top tips in a nutshell.
There is nothing like getting it all done in a nutshell. By the way, did you see that programme on squirrels that was on BBC4, or was it BBC2 the other evening? Squirrels, I've always considered, this is complete tangent now, but I've always considered squirrels to be like tree rats. Haven't you? They are really, really smart animals, particularly the grey squirrel. No, they're not rats. That's the reason that the grey squirrel, because he's so intelligent, has actually overtaken the red squirrel, which is our own native one. So there we go. Moving smartly on. Anyway, listen, great show. If you get an opportunity, thought I'd just share that with you.
Just loving it.
If you get an opportunity to watch the entire programme with Nikki Creel, it's some good advice, some great tools on that programme, explaining how you can create great content for all your different media platforms as well. If you want to find out more about that, you can go to the website. I'll give you the details of that in just a moment. By the way, if you're loving the show today and you're thinking this would work for your business too, well, why don't you get in touch with us? If you'd like to just talk to us about anything that we actually do here at Business Connections Live, then you can get in touch simply by dropping us an email to studio@businessconnectionslive.com. Dead easy to do that. But, you know, we're talking about word of mouth. Let's try some of that, shall we? Because all you've got to do is pick the phone up and give us a call on 01784 256 777. We'll be willing to talk to you. We'd love to talk to you, in fact, not just willing, but love to talk to you. You need to speak to myself, Steve Highland, or of course to Linda Bazant as well. If you've got any GDPR inquiries as well, maybe you're looking for someone to come and do an audit for you, or come out there and give you some advice. She doesn't do it for free. She's very, very expensive, but she's also very good. But let's be honest, let's be upfront about this. Then you can give us a call on 01784 256 777. I am digging a hole for myself today. I'm waiting for her to come through the door and throw something at me. Also, if you wish, you can always watch the programme on Facebook as well by going to our Facebook channel. You can leave comments there about the programme. Watch us, of course, on Roku and all the other channels, but the best place to go for over 300 hours of great business advice is to the website at businessconnectionslive.com. Thank you very much. Gordon's just told me we've had a call from Sammy Squirrel. He wants to know how he keeps his nuts dry during the winter. Thank you very much, Sammy Squirrel. Do you realise that the squirrels, I know we're going off tangent here, but squirrels, they can bury up to 9,000 nuts and only forget where 10% of them are buried. And the other thing as well with squirrels, their brains get bigger in the autumn because they've got to remember where all their nuts are. I'll tell you what, if you've missed the programme, you need to watch it. I sat there transfixed for an entire hour. In fact, we could do an entire show on squirrels. Meanwhile, back at Business Connections Live, joining me in the studio today is Graham Wilson. He's the business coach and clinical hypnotherapist. Today we're talking about word of mouth. Okay, so there we go. After that small interlude there, talking about squirrels, understanding how we learn and how our customers behave, and also the power of stories. It's interesting. Those two together are quite interesting because there we were. A moment or so we were talking about squirrels. We were telling stories, and it's interesting because when somebody goes to a film and you say to them, tell me about the film, they don't go, oh, well, what happened? They rolled the credits at the beginning and then there was a few spaceships flying, the blah, 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 blah. They don't tell it to you linearly. What people will do when they tell a story, they'll tell you the best bit. They will actually take that. Is that what we're doing with our businesses as well when it comes to storytelling?
It is,
taking the best bit out.
You take the bit that had the emotional connection with you or gave you an experience bit, and you talk about that bit. Which is particularly relevant to you, which is squirrels in your case, which I'm delighted to say.
For today, can I just point out that it just was a fascinating programme, but that's neither here nor there. We're getting lost now, aren't we?
But we're having fun.
Exactly. Understanding how we learn and how our customers behave.
Yeah.
Jake Pierce is the guy that came up with the process, wasn't it?
Yeah, Jake. I mean, this whole word of mouth that works programme that we're now working on came out of nearly 20 years of work from Jake Pierce. Now, Jake's an anthropologist, he's a psychologist from Oxford, he's a branding expert, he became a semiotics expert, which is, a next level of guruship, if you like. And he had a fascination about, of all the marketing methodologies that we have, this whole thing about word of mouth. Now, you've rightly said people talk. It all happens in the real world. 80% of it happens, and 90% of us trust a friend, but only 8% of us trust an advert. So this trust is a big issue, and how we do it. So he studied this for about 15 years, about every book that's been written, every piece of information in his market research head, and we came up with this format to try and understand how we learn as customers and how we adopt products, but also how we teach. So we spent the last year with the other founder, Alan Casey, who's codified all this information. He's basically downloaded Jake's head into a codified online program which teaches people this methodology, because it's not easy. You've been alluding to this, actually. It's not just about talking, and people think it is, but word of mouth isn't. There's a lot to learn.
One of the things that I see when people are doing word of mouth, it's going back to what we were talking about, the linear storytelling. They think that everything has to be done linearly. So it has a beginning, an introduction, a middle, and then the end. And the payoff is invariably at the end. And a lot of the things that we do in business, actually, the payoff needs to be at the beginning. and then we support it afterwards. Is it just understanding the structure of the linguistics that we're using?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, word of mouth, there's a process to word of mouth. I mean, Jonah Berger wrote an excellent book called Contagion, and he said, you know, being viral or getting viral, it's not just about talking. There's a process, there's a recipe, if you like, to it. And that's what we've uncovered and helping people with. Because you're so right, there is a recipe. And a referral, for example, lots of us in business do what we think is good referral, but often we don't. Because again, there's a process to that, and there's actually a methodology. They start with the end benefit, they want facts, and we want to leave people with an understanding of the outcome. And
if there was a top-line process then, a top-line recipe that you could share today, what do you think it would be then?
Well, one of the things I'm happy to share with the viewers is on our website, which you've got details on there, there's access to our referral writing guide, and that will give everybody an immediate sense of how to write and use a referral. Because a lot of people don't like the idea of just being given a script. But the
is it the referralize?
Referralize. That's
it. I do like a good American.
Yeah, we came up with it.
Referralize.
I think it was over alcohol. It certainly wasn't over.
Yeah.
It wasn't over.
So if we just have a look at the website for a moment, we'll just say, so how good is your referral? Do you have a carefully crafted referral message that you give the people you meet, and do they say the same every time?
Yep.
Very interesting. Perhaps you're a free spirit. It's interesting because when we send out our documentation to our guests that come on the programme, one of the things that I think is actually missing from it are, here's what we need you to tweet, here's what we need you to say, and here's the key thing. So they don't even have to think about it. They just get all the messages are all there. Include your message into this message, and that's what we want to get at.
And that's exactly what we do. Our referral writing guide will show people how to do that. But what we've done, Referralize, takes it a step further. Now, I've been involved in marketing for over 40 years through pharmaceuticals, etc. And one of the problems you always have is, how do you know that your referral's working with real people? So with Referralize, we will test your referral with 100 people in 4 days, and we'll get the response for you that tells you how persuasive it is, number one, and then it tells you whether or not they'd viralize it. So
now, is that a service that is free? Or
no, it's £100 to get 100 people to tell you what they think about you, whether they like it or not. So, and basically that's a lost leader for anybody that understands about doing that level of research with 100 people. But we think it's really important for people to understand this. The referral is so important, and it becomes part of your elevator pitch that you and I would talk about as well.
When you're talking about this, one of the biggest problems that I see, the word of mouth, is actually who you're talking to, and it's choosing the right person. There's always this expression about being in a darkened room. It's a party, and the pretty lady or the gentleman, whoever you want to hitch up with, is the other side of the room, but the lights are off. They can't see you looking or smiling, so therefore you are just talking to yourself. Is there a technique then that we should be using to identify the right people that we should be talking to, the right people that should be getting our referrals or should be sending our referrals?
Well, there is. I mean, a part of that is really about understanding your customer, first of all, and we spend a lot of time on the programme.
Do you profile your customers?
Yes, we do. I profile my customers, but through the programme we teach you how to profile your customers. It's this misunderstanding of they buy a lot so they talk about us. Not necessarily, usually not. And advocates are important, but so are champions. Now, I champion many people that I meet who have got expertise. I don't buy much of the product, therefore they tend to ignore me in terms of involving me in their business. But I actually speak about them quite a lot as a champion. Now, as an advocate, I would use someone a lot, but I would talk, because advocates love your products. Back to this thing about advocates. So do you profile them? Yes. You need to understand who your customers are. Very important. And there's methodologies, and there's actually hard work to do in actually finding out who your customers are, because the problem is we think often, don't we, in business, we think this is a great idea. We do market research, which has its limitations, because we know if you actually pay people for market research and answers, you get what you pay for. You don't actually get what they really think. Are you a good salesman? Yes, I am. Oh, great, I'll give you a job. But actually, let's really talk about that. Let's see what your face was like, your body language when you did that. Let's say, tell me about that and delve into it. Then you find out what customers really think about you. And that can be very, very telling. So organisations, when we get back to talking about culture, have got to learn to become listening organisations and very open to change. Because there are lots of stories of how people get it wrong by not knowing the customers.
Is networking, as we know, is that something but the same thing but on a lower level? Or is it on a higher level? I'm not quite certain. Because networking is doing exactly that, isn't it? You go in there, and the whole purpose of going to a networking event is that you explain, somebody will become your advocate, and later on they will recommend you on, a recommendation on.
Yeah.
You're not expecting, even though people do, they're not expecting to sell at that moment.
No, they're not, and it won't often happen. Networking, I find, is an interesting one. I tend to look at a lot of networking events as talking shops, unfortunately. And one of the things I coach people on, and we look at in the programme, is what I call the British disease.
The British disease.
The British disease, which fundamentally means we don't blow our own trumpet. And I will often work with a client, and in 10 minutes I can sell that client better than they will, because we're, oh, well, yes, so are you any good? Yeah, we're quite good. What do you mean quite good? Well, actually, we're the best in class. Well, tell people you're the best in class. And Brits tend not to do that. And in a lot of networking, there's a lot of lovely discussions with some great people and talented people. But they actually, back to your point of process, and this is what we do with the referral and word of mouth, realise that when you meet someone, it's very simple to say, look, this is what we're about, this is why, and this is the outcome if you do that.
Is that the recipe?
That's fundamentally, that's the part of the referral recipe. Word of mouth's a much bigger recipe and takes much longer to get into. But for referral, there's a recipe to that in itself.
Just repeat it one more time for us.
So it would be, what's the end benefit? You know,
end benefit.
Why should you use me? Then it would be 3 facts as to why you should use us, which is the authenticity. And then finally, it would be the outcome. The result of that is this will happen to your business. And we can talk about how that happens in learning terms in the brain, because it's about getting interest from people, which is in the feeling brain, which is where all creativity and change happens. If you don't get that, nothing happens. If people are still asking you questions, you're not going to sell. You're not going to engage them. So you go from that interest. Then there's an authenticity, which is in the frontal part of the brain here, where we think. And it's saying, well, does this stack up? And we do this. We want to know, well, is it right? Is the proof source credible? Is the facts, is there information there? And then it actually, if that happens, it falls to the basal part of your brain, which is in here, which is in the reptilian, if you like, instinctive brain, where we know from experience whether or not it's relevant to us. And we think, yeah, that's absolutely relevant, need to do it. Bang, done.
When we're telling those stories then, and we're trying to get this information across, is there a process then? I mean, you just mentioned there you've got the key benefits, and what's actually going to come out of it for the listener. Is there any other tips that you can give us when it comes to standing up there and presenting our business in such a way? I mean, it's very easy, I think, for a lot of businesses. Because I've heard ourselves do it, where you will step back and we're quite good. And if you notice, what we say is that we are the UK's #1 online business channel. There's no two ways about it. And for a number of reasons, we're able to say that. But is there a opportunity then for businesses, for instance, somebody, we're just not far away from Shepperton here, for the butchers in Shepperton to turn around and say, we are the #1 butchers in Shepperton High Street.
Absolutely.
Even if they are the only one.
Yeah. I mean, Brits see that as being arrogant. We don't like being arrogant. We look at other nations who do that and we think they're arrogant. But there's nothing wrong with being factual. And in fact, I often, selling myself, say what I've achieved because I'm proud of it.
So how would you describe you then? What would be your sales story? How would you tell me about you in that elevator pitch?
Well, my experience, the outcome is, okay, so the benefit of using myself is I've been around for a long time. I've worked with both corporate and I've worked with large companies in very high growth companies. So I have a lot of experience. The reason is I've built the largest outsourcing company in the world in healthcare. I've exited and built one of the largest companies in logistics. And I've, for 35 years, gathered a lot of expertise in behaviours and how we work. The outcome is, and this is where I get to my positioning, if you like, is I actually inspire transformation. And that's what you bring in. So that will be the outcome of using me, is I'll inspire transformation in the way you
it's interesting when you hear it actually vocalised, because you did exactly what you said people should do. You started with the key you I suppose what it is at the very beginning, it's establishing yourself. You're establishing with key benefits of what you do. And I think a lot of the time what we do, we waffle around.
We do.
We waffle around. Listen, there's more to come. I hope you find this as interesting as I am. Graham Wilson is my guest today, and I hope you're enjoying today's live edition of Business Connections Live. You must excuse me. I came down with the screaming abdabs a couple of days ago, and like all men, I'm just a baby. So it's effectively man flu. So, you know, no sympathy from anybody at the moment, but there you go. It's just one of those things. Lovely to have your company with us today. You are watching Business Connections Live, a great show. Hope you're finding it interesting. Word of mouth, a really interesting topic. Now let's move on. If it's meant to be, it's down to me. Antonio Falco joined us on the programme on Business Connections Live 202 on the 30th of October of last year. In fact, we were talking about all sorts of different topics on that particular programme on the day. One of the issues was about attitude to sales in the current environment that we're in now. Of course, Brexit just around the corner. We're not quite certain what really is going on there. I think there's a lot of things going. I hope there's a lot of things going on behind closed doors as far as the Brexit negotiations are concerned. If it isn't, then we really are truly in a lot of mire. But his belief is that the mindset should be, if it's meant to be, it's down to be. It's not about the government getting on and doing it. It's about us getting down and doing it as well. It's about businesses pulling their socks up and actually preparing for whatever the outcome should be. He was talking about the need to ensure that you focus on ensuring that you're pushing for and focusing on the next sale, irrespective of what the outcome of Brexit is going to be. There's no point in just stopping and waiting. There isn't. You've just got to get on with it. It was a great show, as always. If you want to check out the entire programme, of course, you can go to our website at Business Connections Live. But just to give you the key takeaways, here's Antonio Falco.
My name is Antonio Falco, and I'm the Sales Director. What I would say to you is this. If you are running a small business or a business, we want you to be successful. Because without businesses like yours being successful, we have no economy, we have no taxes, we have no country, and we have no jobs. So the key is to be successful. To be successful, get focused. Understand what it is you're trying to sell and to who, and try and understand what they need to hear in order to buy your product or service. And to do all of that, pick the phone up and speak to people. As much as we'd like them to come to us, I think it's better if we try and control our own destiny by picking the phone up and trying to get to speak to people about how we can help them. Your business is about how you can help somebody, not just about taking money from them.
There we go, Antonio Falco. Great program. Do actually watch the entire programme. If it's meant to be, it's down to me. So just get on, get out there, and don't be sitting back and just worrying about everything, because, you know, we can only live for the moment, only live for the now. And there's no, you know, if I was to worry about the next second or the next hour or the next week, then I don't know whether I'd actually make it through. And probably it's going to be the same for you. Yes, you've got to plan forward. I appreciate that. And you've got to have forward planning. You've got to have maybe the direction to go to. But the worry and the things that we can do, we cannot do them in the future. We've got to do it, start right now, make it happen. It's down to us to actually do that. So do watch the entire programme. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Graham Wilson. He is a business coach and clinical hypnotherapist. Listen, we've been sitting here and people have probably been noticing that there are a pair of running shoes on the table. These are the running shoes here. And can I just say, let me just put them over here for a moment. Can I just say that you have incredibly small feet?
I do. I fall.
Can we just
over
have a look at those? There we go. Look there. These. What size are they?
11. It was
kiddie 11 though.
Well, it was a miscommunication. I said I needed some 11 running shoes, and that's what I got. That's the
because
problem
there's my hand. I can cover them over with my hand. But so why have we had these running shoes on the table? What's the purpose behind that? Because it does draw you to them, doesn't it?
It draws those lovely little shoes, which will be with my granddaughter B before long. It really is about the fact, and this brings us to the issue of culture, word of mouth as a culture, to be quite honest. And learning word of mouth and the programme, it's actually, we say, is preparing for a marathon, hence our little shoes here.
We like it.
And yeah, most people, of course, these are kids' shoes. Now, then when it comes to word of mouth, I could be cruel and say most people, actually, the level of knowledge is about that level of a kid right now, and we can change that. But the thing about running shoes is you've got to have the right shoes, and if you're a serious runner, I could probably never have brought the right pair of shoes here, so let's stick with these for now. But it's a marathon. You've got to prepare, you've got to get ready for it. And as a part of your culture, where word of mouth comes in is we're in an age now where, as you and I talked earlier about marketing and talking about a marketing mix, I come from a time where we used to market out oranges and apples and bars of chocolates and pop-ups. It was really creative and exciting. Whereas nowadays it seems that all we have is digital marketing, and most people under the age of 30 odd only know digital. It's a learned and it's a conditioned behaviour. But there's much more to that. So we need to look at what happens. And the problem with much of the digital marketing and the digital referral marketing is that it tends to spike. It tends to be short term. We call them campaigns, don't we? It's kind of military terminology. We call it a campaign. And we talk about targeting people and winning, which in itself is a little bit against actually becoming involved, isn't it? And having a relationship and connecting with people. So word of mouth really needs to be a part of the culture of an organisation. You have to say, do we really want to connect with our customers? Because the program we talk about is the exposure to the product, then the experience of the product, then involvement with the product and connection. And most people never get beyond exposure and experience. They don't involve the right people. And that's where we fall down with customers. They're a mistake. Cadbury's made a wonderful mistake in changing a recipe in Australia because they talked to customers. But they didn't talk to advocates. They talked to anybody that just eats chocolate. But if they talked to advocates who love Cadbury's chocolate, the message they got was quite different. So what did they do? They changed the bar size, they changed the recipe. It was a disaster. They then talked to people who flooded them with information, who loved the product, and they actually went back to the original.
Same story for Coca-Cola as well.
Coca-Cola did it, the Chevy Tahoe did it. We've got loads of experience of where it can go wrong. And this point is that they don't get involvement. So getting involvement of your customers, and particularly your advocates, is a cultural thing. Because at the senior level, you've got to be prepared to actually listen to what they say, because you might not like it. And then when you get these advocates on board, they become passionate and they might want to do it a bit differently from your methodology. Well, does that matter? And the other interesting thing about the culture is having these external people who you don't pay, who talk about your brand. Now, they have a passion, and when we start companies off, we start off with this passion, usually 3 people. We start a company and we're passionate. We've got nothing but passion. And we grow it, then we get a lot of people and we get moved away and we bring people in, 50, 60, 80. Ask yourself the question, have those people got the same passion about the product that you had when you started it? Do they talk to people with that same passion? Because it actually tends to dissipate over time. Whereas oddly enough, you bring advocates in and there are people out there that actually share that passion. Now, how important to actually harness that and have, if you like, an unpaid sales force. And you shouldn't actually leave your advocates and do nothing. You should respect the time, you should reward them and recognise them. But actually paying advocates isn't very successful. And there's a lot of work. Look at Dan Pink's work, look at Contagion, and all the work says that actually paying for referrals doesn't work very well. It's a short-term view. And there's some work will say that people who actually were paid for referrals actually did less referral than those that were advocates.
It's interesting what you're saying. Is it a generational thing, though? Depending on who the target market is that you are aiming for, is it a different approach? Is word of mouth more appropriate for an older market as opposed to a younger market? You already differentiated between the 2 types of market. We're going down the route that digital marketing seems to be the end-all and be-all of all things at the moment.
Yep.
The digital market obviously is predominantly, it's going to be a lot younger. We've got the shorter attention span online. It's marketing not through word of mouth, but actually through images and text. So is it the problem that we're losing the art of word of mouth?
We're losing the art of connection and conversation. There's been a lot of recent data that shows that many young people find it very, very difficult to actually converse and communicate with anyone else, especially older people. So I think, and we've seen wonderful stuff from Simon Sinek and others talking about this, about how young people literally are addicted to the phones, literally because of the dopamine hit, and how they expect this superficiality that we get from digital and the social world, because it is, and real relationships don't happen online, they happen in real life between people. And that's accepted. Now, older people, I think, yes, they get that and understand it more than younger people. They're having a hard time, young kids, getting used to this. But is one applicable to one or the other? It's applicable to all of them. Older people need to understand that there's a methodology. Younger people need to actually embrace it as another part back to that mix and start to get better at understanding that for their lives to be enriched at a personal level as well as a business level, they need to learn more about how to actually communicate. In a business sense, they need to understand more about how to make word of mouth work for them.
It's very interesting because, I mean, you were talking there, you've obviously got a granddaughter. I've got a couple of grandsons. And the thing about it is that they get plugged into the technology these days. And the withdrawal from the technology, and I do wonder, I mean, the research was out last week, wasn't it? That, as you said, it becomes addictive, what is going on with these people. And And that is a worry. You look back, this sounds like two old blokes now, but you look back at when we were younger and you would come home from school. Yes, you might watch children's television for that hour, but you would converse more with at least your peers on a one-to-one basis. You would play, and we seem to have lost the art of playing. Very
much so. I mean, look at Steve Jobs. He only let his kids use technology 2 hours a day.
And of course, schools, they're actually now banning phones as well, aren't they? The smartphones.
They are. Which is probably a good thing to get kids to focus on what they should be doing, which is their education. So I don't have a problem with that. But there is an issue that we do need to learn to communicate and connect better. And that's a behavioural thing. So because it's behavioural, Steve, it doesn't matter whether you're old or young, it's a behaviour. And since we were cavemen, we come back, behaviours have grown and evolved, but fundamental behaviours across the world are very, very typical.
Can you give us some of the successes of the training and of the information that you've given? You've gone out there and you've seen businesses that you've turned around. Is there a real life example of the kind of where this has actually truly worked?
Yeah, well, there are a number of examples which we've got on the website, and we've got a number of videos. Very important medium, by the way, is video for authentic communication nowadays. And Jake, in his early days, had a number of great successes. In New Zealand, for example, he took one orange drink, and he actually got it ahead of Coca-Cola through pure word of mouth and through allying it with
Is it
triathlons.
The exception, do you think? Is it the exception or the rule? Can it be done, or do you just capture a wave and ride the wave when it comes to that kind of that marketing, that word of mouth? Just something, just something identifies with the audience that you're targeting, and all of a sudden you're on the crest of a wave for a time.
Is it
luck?
No, it's not luck. It's not luck. I mean, it's the management of luck, if you like. It's making it work for you. Is it an exception? It's possibly seen as that because all the story and everything goes to what we're doing now in the digital world. But there are countless companies. Zappos is an example. You know, they put all their money back into the customer experience. Note that word, the customer experience, because they know that that's where it happens and that's where the word gets out and it's multiplied. They've got a great product and they do good. So we can all do it. It's kind of got lost, which is why we think it's very important now to bring this back into the world.
If we're a business then, how do we step back for a moment and implement this into our business? We know we need to do it. We understand the principles of what we're trying to achieve. Is there an overall plan that we put together that will allow us to implement this into a business? Is there a blueprint that you can nearly plug into any organisation, or is it just a way that people have to think? It's a different way of thinking.
It's a bit of all of the above. Back to these little chaps. You know, you've got to get yourself ready for a marathon. And when we put this programme together, it's about 40 hours of learning. There's over 12 hours of videos. We provide audios, we provide workbooks, deep learning. There's a lot to do.
Is this an online learning
This is an online programme. And you can't shortcut learning word of mouth. We're back into marketing here. You know, we go back where you actually learned how to market, and you went to colleges and business schools to learn this, and word of mouth's like that. It's yes, you can get ready for it, but you need to go through the process. And what we found in putting all this together is that you can't actually shortcut. You have to find out where your customers are, what customers think, where they talk about you, what they say about you. So you've got to find out who they are, what mediums, how do you connect, where do you connect? I mean, advocates are very social. We're in the World Cup right now. It's a social experience. Advocates of England are in the pubs. I heard them 4 streets away with the result yesterday. And you have the same. You have people, you have fisketeers who use fiscus scissors, who form clubs and groups, and they socialise. You have people who go to the movies together, who go to see rock concerts together in different levels of advocates. So we all tend to socialise and use this, but there is a process from a business.
It seems to me that if I was to break it down, if I was stepping back, when we talk about word of mouth, in the old days, there would be you talk to your PR team, or your PR team perhaps. So they'd go a bit of marketing, a bit of research into who your audience are. You've got your marketing where you bring the horse to water, then you've got your sales team. Who make the horse drink, and then you've got your customers, and you will get the referrals back from your customers. And what word of mouth as a process is taking all those individual components, the identifying who your customer are, the actual process of the sales, the post-sales thing, putting it all together. And now instead of it calling it marketing and sales, it's now becoming, the whole process becoming word of mouth. Is that unfair, or is that...
No, it's quite fair, because what happens is once you find the people, I mean,
because that defines it to me now, because I can see what you're... Because I think when we hear word of mouth, the thought that goes through your head initially is that it is just about the communication, talking, which is all anything is, really. Mm-hmm. But now within a business context, word of mouth is, WOM, is your sales process.
It is, and it's beyond that, it's the development process and your growth as well. Because if you take it from this exposure and experience, you get to this level of involvement with your customers and then connection with them. Then we teach people about the real fun stuff, never mind the research, the hard work. We get people down to de bono techniques, and how do we bring our advocates in and ask them what could we do that's different, because they have ideas. Advocates love to tell you about your product and what you can do, and if you're prepared to listen from a cultural perspective, you find many customers are suddenly coming up with products. I mean, Fiskus scissors. I mean, they were struggling.
I tell you what, can we talk a little bit, just because I mean, we're whistling through this and I'm finding it really interesting. Can we talk a little bit more about the power of the advocate? We keep talking about the advocate. We know what the advocates do, but it's how we use the advocates, how we encourage the advocates, how we get them on board, how we make certain that we utilise the information and the data from the advocates ourselves when we've got that information. We'll talk more about that in just a few moments' time. I'll let you have a bit of a think on that for a second. Is that all right?
Perfect.
You're watching Business Connections. I hope you're finding it interesting. And as I said to you before, the whole purpose of the program is to maybe give you a different viewpoint, a different idea about the way you should be operating and running your business at the moment. My guest in the studio today is Graham Wilson. He's a business coach and clinical hypnotherapist. And we are talking about word of mouth. Now, if you've heard the expression before and you're thinking it is just about going out there and effectively going to networking events and talking about your business, that isn't what we are talking about. Word of mouth is a process. It's a process that takes you from selling nothing to selling something and then getting feedback on it, a process that allows you to get feedback to improve the product. It's a loop thing. You start here, you work your way down it, and the feedback you get at the end of it, because you're encouraging that, loops back to the beginning, improves whatever the product is, and therefore you see an incremental increase in sales or your business. Now, don't we all want that within our organisations? Don't we want to see that incremental growth each and every year? Of course we will do, and that's what this is all about. So don't be stepping back for a moment and thinking that word of mouth is just about, I've got a message, I'm going to relay it in the most cost-effective and easy manner. What this is a process that takes you through the entire marketing, sales, post-sales process. And don't we all want to know how to do that? Of course we do. You're watching Business Connections Live, and it's great to have you with us on today's program. We are live on a Monday, as always, at midday. Beautiful day outside, so the air conditioning's on in here today, keeping us nice and cool. Now, each and every month, thousands of you are actually downloading the program on iTunes. We'd like to thank you for that. So thank you very much indeed. iTunes, very important. It's a world audience. It's one of the biggest platforms. Of course, there are other podcasting platforms out there. Over 200, we're 230 is the actual program. There's over 300 hours of content sitting on iTunes at the moment, and it's all for free. And just because it's free doesn't mean it doesn't have a value. Everything is there that you need to know about growing your business. If you need to raise money for your business, how do you go about it? If you need to increase your sales, how do you go about it? Where do you start with your marketing? What about social media? How do you do that? What about growing your own personal business circle? Things like LinkedIn as well. Ever thought about being a non-exec director on a board? We've got programs about that. If you want to find out more about that, just go along to iTunes, and it's dead easy, because we'd also like you to leave us a review about the program. That's what we're really after from you. That's our bit of marketing. You can become our advocate on iTunes. Now, all you got to do is go into the iTunes. You'll find the iTunes, of course, on your PC. View the program in iTunes itself, and you'll find the tab that is ratings and reviews. Click on that tab. It'll then allow you to write something glowing and wonderful about the program, and also give it a 5-star review. Maybe Graham Wilson's business coach and clinical hypnotherapist. It's the most interesting program I've ever heard, and I've now implemented it into my business, and it's helped me grow my business by 50%. That's the kind of review we want. That's the recommendation that we'd like. And what will happen then is that iTunes, their algorithm, when somebody is watching an alternative business program, there are others out there, but when it's true, I know it's hard to believe, but when somebody is watching an alternative business program, what will happen is that iTunes will recommend Business Connections Live. And thousands of you are downloading the program each and every week, and we really do appreciate that. So please do leave a review on iTunes and help us grow Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest in studio today is Graham Wilson. He's a business coach and clinical hypnotherapist. It's been a really interesting program. We're into the last segment of the show. We were talking about advocates, and the importance of an advocate is obviously, we're all looking for recommendations.
Yeah.
It's nearly something that is inbuilt. We all like to be liked, but it's more than that, isn't it?
It is. It is. An advocate's relationship with your product or your service is quite different. It's more of an emotional relationship than a functional relationship. And if we think about going into your favourite restaurant, which we all have, many of us have, there's a restaurant where, I have one in Wokingham, and we know Lamb is fantastic. You walk in, it gives you a hug, sits you down, fusses over you, and it's not just great food, it's the experience. Now, other people go in just for the first time and they have a meal, they have great food, they don't have the experience. But the advocate does have that, and they have an emotional connection with a lot of brands. It's like the Cadbury's. Cadbury's asked people who eat chocolate who just had a connection, but advocates had an emotional connection. So the feeling is, now the result is that emotion and that passion, like all of us, drives us to actually talk about it. And advocates will talk without being asked in a social situation 3 to 4 times more than anybody else. If they see an opportunity to talk about it, they say, oh gosh, I did this the other week. They love to talk about it. Part of that is ego. We all like to be seen as an expert. It's an opportunity, and they get really involved. We know there are Porsche clubs, BMW, mini clubs and so on, where people are passionate about telling you about the size of the...
Is that a powerful way then of growing advocates, to make them part of what you are doing?
Very much so. And the whole point about the connection with advocates is how do you connect with them? Social groups. And I mentioned that Fisker's Scissors. They developed these guys called Fisketeers. They were nearly going bust. The Fisketeers. It's amazing what they did. And they didn't know what to do, and they thought that their customers were middle-aged white women who were using the scissors. Cheap Chinese imports were killing the business. They went out, found out actually it was Generation X, American, black Americans and black and Asians in the States, young mums who were doing it. So the Fisketeers started talking, and they developed this group, and they've become a huge group now. They've got special scissors with a little number on if they're a member. They have social events. They organise themselves. There's even the true story of one woman who offered a kidney to another Fisketeer because they were so passionate. But the interesting thing is, as
these are the DIY scissors, aren't they?
The DIY scissors.
This is Fisker's.
Yeah, Fisker's, lovely orange scissors. But the result of this involvement was it went back to Fisker's, and all this social stuff's going on, but they were saying, but by the way, why don't you have shears for people with small hands? So, new product. By the way, why don't you have scissors that go around a corner? So they're now a brand leadership again from having fallen away.
That's really interesting. However, looking at that is nearly a community within a community, isn't it? That is that's the card maker kind of community, isn't it? Which is in the hobbyist community, which is nearly a community already. Yeah. And now they've nearly bought into that. Is that something that you would recommend if there is already a community out there? Buy into that community and become integral, a cornerstone to it.
Very important. You need to find out where those communities are.
That's
you need to find out where people talk.
Yeah,
you've got to find out where they talk, and you will find that people who love your product actually talk in certain groups. They talk in certain social events as well, and certain groups, and you have to do some hard work to find out where that is. Then, to connect with them, you want to make sure that you actually encourage that, sometimes actually put new groups together where people can meet and talk, and you perhaps support the cost of that to get them in there and say, talk to us and tell us. And people love to tell you, and they do it with the right way, because back to this thing about a passion does a lot for business. Passion spreads the word.
I'm going to ask you in a few moments' time to give us the key takeaways today. We've talked a lot, and it's been really fascinating. Just talk us through the website before we do that. Do excuse me. Just talk us through the website. What kind of resources do we have online? Also, can we find out as well about the training that you also do online too? So, if we go onto the website as well, if I just work away word of mouth, accepted by experts, the most effective way that you can market your business. So, where does that leave you? What resources do we have online here?
Well, the whole program is online. It's driven online. So we offer you, the first thing is find out where you are in terms of, back to your butcher, baker, candlestick maker or corporate. The first thing is, there you have it there, the variants. What are you? And what we find is you're either a high volume, low intimacy, or high volume, high intimacy, typically low intimacy, or you're perhaps a low volume business with a very high intimacy. So you need to find out first of all where you are. We help you do that, and then we put you onto the relevant program that will take you through, as you beautifully described, this process of understanding how you learn to manage the process of making word of mouth work. And the program is driven by videos, it's driven by audio, and we offer online workbooks, worksheets, deep learning sessions, so people can get a lot out of it. And much of the work has to, quite rightly, be done by the individual. Now, what we're also doing at this stage is and we're currently looking to build a group of accredited coaches we're going to accredit, because some of our customers are going to want a little bit of help in doing this. There are certain aspects of the market research, perhaps running customer focus groups to find out where we could go, is not second nature to everybody in business. So we're taking on a group of coaches right now who will be able to train with us, become accredited with us, and offer that as an extra service if people require it.
If you want to find out more details, just go to their website. It is womtwo.com. If you go on the website, you'll be able to get all the details there, and you'll be able to see it. As I was just scanning through it, I just find 73% of marketers say they have allocated WOM budget. Have you, is the question. 84% of people take action based on personal recommendations. There's one coming up in just a moment. Word of mouth increases advert effectiveness by 54%. Advocates are 3 times more likely to share product opinions with people they don't know. There is one coming up in a moment that struck my screen. 65% of new business owners, not that one. These are obviously at random, must be 100 or so of them there. I'm just waiting for the one that,
so
here it is.
Nuggets.
64% of marketers think that WOM is the best, but only 6% have done anything about it.
And
that shows you just how little people are doing.
Absolutely, and that's the crux of it. It's time we really learn to get back to understanding how connection and communication, and learn how to get people talking in the right way. It's immensely powerful. We all understand it, we need to do it.
How many times have you heard that before in your life? You know you need to do it, but you're not doing it. You know, it's just like you need to go jogging. You know you should be, but you ain't doing it. And maybe in your business, this is the equivalent to going out and doing that jogging run every evening. Go out there, do that jogging run, get in shape, build up that muscle. We know we should, but we're not. Listen, it's been fascinating. We always ask our guests to give us the key takeaways from the programme at the end. Okay. The hour has flown by. I have found it absolutely fascinating. And for me, what's happened today is a clarity of what word of mouth really means.
Good.
We had somebody who came on before who was a word of mouth advocate, and I wasn't certain at the end of the programme what that meant. It's a long time ago, and they won't know who they are, and I didn't know that. Today I've really got an understanding, and I hope you've got an understanding as well if you've been watching this, the importance of what this process can do for your business. Please, the airways are all yours. Say who you are, where you're from, straight down Cameron 4, where Rolson is. Take it away.
Thank you. I'm Graham Wilson. Today I'm really here on behalf of Word of Mouth that works. Why? Well, it's important, and please go to our website and have a look, because everybody will tell you, and we all know, that word of mouth is probably the most successful way you can ever promote and grow your business. The problem we've had and we've discussed today is that people think it just happens. People think just talking does it. Well, it doesn't. And we've had over 20 years of working on this and looking at all the evidence. And there is a method, there's a process, a recipe to word of mouth, which is why I have these little chaps here, because you've got to prepare for a marathon. There's a lot of work to do to understand how to make it work for you. But if it does, and it becomes a part of your culture, it's immensely powerful. It will give you not only advocates that talk about your customers that grow, but it also will give you ideas for new products and growth, ideas that you probably wouldn't come across in any other way. So it should become a part of your marketing mix, a part of the way you do business. And we talked earlier about referrals as well, is you need to get that referral right, because if you don't control the message out there, people will make it up. So learn how to control, learn the process, and come and join us. Come and have a look. We'll teach you how to do it.
Hope you've enjoyed today's program. It's been a real insight into what word of mouth is all about. My thanks as well to Graham Wilson for joining us on today's program. Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
So then, there you go. That wraps up today's program. I'd like to think that what you're going to be doing while the sun is out, you'll be maybe just sitting back and having a little bit of a think. How do you incorporate some of the ideas, some of the things that you've heard today into the way that you operate and you run your business? Because I think it'll make a big, big difference. I suppose the nice thing about what we do here each and every Monday is we're business owners just like you are, and we're listening to our experts that come in and sit down and share their knowledge with us. And I find sometimes nearly every week I walk out the studio door inspired and uplifted, because I feel that that is more great ideas that I can implement into my business. Now, if you're doing that as well, then maybe the pair of us together, we're on a journey where we're going to be successful. And, there's always this problem. Are you building a job for yourself, or are you building a business that maybe at some stage that you've got an exit plan for? What are you doing? Have you developed something that is now just a job, or is it truly a saleable business that you could walk away from and sell? Because the IP, the whole idea, what it does, doesn't just depend on you. It is the business. Listen, it's been a great show. Once again, thank you very much indeed. Future programs, who we got lined up for you in the future? Got Taz Thornton, inspirational speaker, author and motivator, is going to be joining us on the program. We've got Peter Liner, he's the chairman of ABLE, the Academy for Business Leaders and Entrepreneurs. Rachel Wild from Monochrome is going to be joining us on the program. Brad Burton, the UK's #1 motivational speaker, is going to be also joining us on the show. Deborah Hume, she's going to be talking about all sorts of different things from Minerva Engagement. Deborah, always a fascinating talk as well. And we've got all sorts of different programs lined up for you in the future. Don't forget, we're here every Monday between 12 and 1. Till we do it all again next week, thank you very much indeed for watching. From my guests, Graham, and from myself, Steve Hahn. Have a great week. We'll see you next week at midday. Bye for now. Bye-bye.